The great starship Serenity Dawn floated silently above the shining blue planet of Saravel. Its hull gleamed under the soft light of twin suns. Inside the ship, Elias Wynn stared out the window, feeling a mix of awe and nervousness. Elias was young, only 28, and chosen to be Earth's first official ambassador to the Varelian Concord, a powerful group of alien civilizations that ruled much of known space. For years, humans had waited to join the stars. Now the moment had come. He brushed his dark hair back and took a deep breath. This was not just any mission. This was the chance for humanity to show who they really were. The Varelians were different from any alien species Elias had heard about. Tall and slender, with smooth, pale blue skin that shimmered faintly, they moved with a grace that seemed almost like dance. Most remarkable were their eyes, large and glowing softly with colors that shifted with their moods. But what set them apart was their powerful minds. The Varelians were telepaths. They could feel thoughts and emotions without speaking. This ability made them wise rulers, but also very private beings. Elias stepped off the ship and onto the landing platform of the Saravel Palace, a vast structure built of crystal and light. The air smelled fresh and clean, filled with the scent of strange flowers that glowed gently under the sun. A small group of Varelians waited to greet him. Their leader was Queen Althera, the ruler of the Concord. She was taller than the others, her presence calm yet commanding. Her long silver hair flowed like water, and her eyes were a deep violet, shining with a strange light. "Welcome, Elias Wynn," she said in a voice soft as silk. Though her words were gentle, Elias felt her mind reach out to him, touching his thoughts like a whisper. "Thank you, Your Majesty," Elias replied, bowing respectfully. He felt a strange warmth in her presence, a feeling he could not explain. The palace was unlike anything Elias had imagined. Walls of shimmering crystal rose high above him, reflecting light in every color. Gardens floated in midair, filled with plants that sang quietly and moved in the breeze. Everything seemed peaceful and alive, but Elias felt small in this vast world. Round him, Varelians moved with ease, speaking to each other without words. He struggled to keep up, feeling like a child among giants. After the formal welcome ceremony, Elias was led to his chambers. Alone, he sat by the window and looked out at the sky. The stars of many galaxies shone brightly, but none as bright as the hope burning inside him. Later that evening, Queen Althera stood alone in her private chambers. She watched the stars through a tall window, her thoughts heavy. For centuries, she had ruled the Concord with wisdom and care. She had seen many species rise and fall, many alliances made and broken. Yet in all that time, she had felt a loneliness deep in her heart. The arrival of humanity was different. Something about Elias puzzled her. His mind was quiet but strong, full of hopes and fears that felt familiar. She had never felt this pull toward another being. She whispered to herself, "I finally found the human meant for me." The morning light spilled through the tall crystal windows of the palace, casting rainbow colors across the polished floors. Elias Wynn stood quietly in the vast hall, waiting as a soft voice called his name. "Elias, come with me." The voice belonged to Queen Althera. He followed her down a corridor filled with glowing plants and floating lights. The palace seemed alive, humming softly with the presence of its ancient power. Finally, they stepped outside into the famous floating gardens, a place where vines and flowers drifted gently in the air. The garden was silent except for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of strange birds. It was a place where the queen often came to think. Althera walked slowly, her eyes studying Elias with curiosity. "You are different," she said simply. Elias smiled, a little unsure. "Different, I suppose I am. We humans are not as elegant as you." The queen's violet eyes sparkled. "Elegance is not always strength." Elias looked around the garden. "On Earth, my grandmother used to have a small garden. Nothing like this, of course, but it was special to her." "Oh," she said, "plants. Listen, if you speak kindly to them." Althera tilted her head. "Plants that listen, ... I like that." They walked together through the garden paths, their steps slow and unhurried. For a long moment, they said nothing. Then Althea spoke again. "Your kind is loud. Emotion fills your minds like a storm. It is difficult to understand." Elias laughed softly. "Yes, humans feel a lot. Sometimes too much. But it is part of who we are." The Queen's eyes softened. "Yet in you, I feel calm." Elia stopped and looked at her. "You surprise me, Queen Althea? I thought your kind would find us overwhelming." She smiled gently. "Perhaps you are not like other humans. You are honest and open. You do not hide behind masks." He felt a strange warmth in her gaze. In the quiet of the floating garden, something shifted between them, a small, invisible thread connecting their hearts. Later, as the suns began to set and the garden lights glowed brighter, Althea returned to her chambers. Alone, she whispered to her closest advisor, a tall Varelian named Saren. "He sees me," she said softly. "Not as a queen, but as Althea, a being tired and lonely." Saren nodded, understanding in his shimmering eyes. "Humans are a mystery. Few can touch the heart of a Varelian." The Queen's voice was barely a whisper. "I think I have found the one who can." The grand hall of the Saravel Palace gleamed with crystal and light as species from across the galaxy gathered for the trial of harmony. It was a ceremony older than many stars, where new members of the Varelian Concord proved their peaceful hearts. Elias Wind stood among the ambassadors, feeling the weight of all eyes upon him. Humans were new to this great council, and many expected them to fail. The other species moved with ease, their minds calm and clear, ready to link in the Harmony Circle, a sacred space where thoughts and feelings were shared openly. Ilias's heart pounded. The trial was not about weapons or strength, but about trust and connection. Each participant would join hands and share their true selves, their memories, hopes, and fears. The Varelians believed this would reveal the soul of each being. As the ceremony began, Elias stepped into the circle. His palms felt sweaty, but he focused on the simple truth inside him. He remembered Earth, his family, his struggles, the beauty of simple moments. He thought of the Queen and the quiet conversations in the floating garden. The other participants closed their eyes, and a wave of warmth passed through the circle. The connection began. Most of the aliens smiled gently, their minds peaceful. But when Elias opened his thoughts, the circle felt different, full of strong emotions, laughter, and even confusion. Some participants blinked, overwhelmed by the human noise. Suddenly, the Queen appeared beside him, her presence like a calm river. She reached out her hand, joining the circle. Their minds touched. Elias felt a calmness he had never known. He saw her memories, centuries of solitude, heavy duties, and quiet hope. She saw his heart, simple, honest, and full of dreams. The others watched in silence, surprised by the bond forming. When the trial ended, Elias opened his eyes. The Queen looked at him with a softness he had never seen before, in a low voice. She said to her closest advisor, he did not just connect, he accepted. The ambassadors applauded, and whispers spread through the hall. Humanity had passed the trial of harmony. That night, Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the stars. He thought of the Queen and the strange feeling growing inside him. He was no longer just an ambassador. He was part of something greater. The days after the trial of harmony were filled with quiet change. The Saravel Palace felt different, brighter, warmer, as if the air itself carried a new energy. The Queen Althea seemed lighter in spirit. Her usual calm and distant demeanor softened, and she laughed softly at small jokes made by her advisors. Elias noticed the change too. Though he was still an outsider in this world of psychic grace and silent thoughts, found himself drawn more often to the Queen's side. Their talks in the floating gardens became longer, filled with stories about Earth and Saravel, about dreams and fears. But not everyone in the palace was pleased. Some advisors whispered behind closed doors. They wondered why the Queen spent so much time with a human. Was Elias influencing her decisions? Was this a danger to the Concord's balance? One evening, as twilight painted the sky in violet and gold, Elias was called to the palace library. It was a vast room filled with ancient books and glowing scrolls that floated gently in the air. The queen waited there, seated by a window that looked out at the stars. "Elias," she began softly, "there is something I must tell you." He nodded, heart beating fast. "For centuries, I have carried the burden of leadership and the loneliness it brings. I have met many beings, but none have reached the place you have." Elias looked into her eyes, searching for meaning. "In a quiet moment, when the stars were still, I whispered to myself, 'I finally found the human meant for me.'" The words hung between them, gentle but heavy with truth. Elias felt a rush of emotions, surprise, doubt, and a strange peace. This was not a simple friendship, nor a political alliance. It was something deeper, a connection of souls across the vastness of space. The queen smiled, a rare and beautiful sight. "You have changed my world, Elias. I ask you now, will you stay? Not as a guest or servant, but as my companion of spirit." Elias hesitated. Said stay meant leaving Earth behind, his family, his life. But in the queen's gaze, he saw a promise of understanding, belonging, and a new kind of home. "I will stay," he said quietly. As they spoke, the palace around them seemed to glow brighter, as if the stars themselves celebrated this quiet moment of connection. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Elias Wynne's choice to stay beside Queen Althera changed not only their lives, but also the future of the Varelian Concord. At first, many in the palace were unsure. How could a human, so different from the elegant and psychic Varelians, live here as a companion to the queen? But Elias did not seek power or status, simply lived with honesty and kindness, sharing his stories and listening with an open heart. Slowly, the palace grew warmer, laughter more frequent. The other species began to see Elias not as an outsider, but as a bridge, a living example of empathy and courage. Elias spent his days learning the ancient ways of the Concord and teaching the queen about Earth's simple joys. The taste of rain, the sound of children's laughter, the beauty of a quiet sunset. Queen Althera's loneliness faded. In Elias, she found a soul who accepted her not for her crown, but for who she truly was. Together they worked to reshape the Concord. Meetings once filled with cold strategy became moments of shared understanding. The council began to value not just strength and logic, but also compassion and peace. One evening, as they walked through the floating gardens, now blooming brighter than ever, the queen stopped and looked up at the stars. "Elias," she said softly, "you have taught me more than I ever imagined. Not through power, but through your heart." He smiled. "And you have shown me a home among the stars." Years later, a statue was placed in the garden. It was not a statue of a queen or a human alone. Instead, it showed two figures standing, side by side, one tall and graceful, the other simple and strong, both gazing upward toward the endless sky. Underneath, a small plaque read, "Here stands the human who bridged worlds, and the queen who found her soul." In her memoirs, Queen Althera wrote, "He was not loud or grand, but in the silence between galaxies, he was everything I longed for." Done so, the story of Elias Wynne the human meant for the queen became a legend, a tale of friendship, hope, and the quiet power of connection that changed the stars forever.